Because the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Alrighty guys, it's Protovoid. This is going to be a mixture of a Tooltip Tuesday and a OSINT or oh shit video. I'll start this off. This isn't a legal video, this isn't legal advice. This is just my understanding of some of the things that are going on, and hopefully I can clear some things up in terms of the misinformation and kind of the push of disinformation right now. There's a lot of things going on in society that are making people not very level-headed, and people are just starting to believe whatever they see on social media, especially from accounts that have big followers. And while I don't mind memes or maybe some embellishment on things to get at least some knowledge out there, just blatant lies, especially by the anarchist pages and all those other dumb pages that just want to push bullshit to kind of feed their own ego. I can't stand that. So today we're gonna go over 2 court cases. The first one, and this isn't going to be an in-depth thing, I'll post some links in my story so you can kind of see for your own what these say. But the first one we're going to go over is Miranda v. Arizona. So Miranda v. Arizona, that is where the basis of your Miranda rights came from. Some background. So you had Miranda, who was arrested. He was then interrogated, and he then signed a written confession of rape and kidnapping. He was sentenced to 20 to 30 years. You can go forward. And the question is, were his statements admissible, and whether his Fifth Amendment constitutional rights for not being compelled to incriminate himself were violated. So the issue comes that he was found guilty, and his statements that essentially he was forced to make against himself were held. So go forward, a bunch of appeals, gets to the Supreme Court. It was then overturned. So then they had a second trial. None of the information that was brought up in the first trial were essentially regarding his own statements or those that weren't under Miranda. Those were not brought up. He was still convicted, sentenced to 20 to 30 years. Kind of cool thing, if you come to Arizona, you can actually go to the area where he was held, and you can kind of see the style of the building. Whether you're a history nerd like me or whatever it may be, I just find stuff like that cool. So you might have heard of your Miranda rights, and hopefully you can understand by now that this case is where your Miranda rights come from. We'll sidebar for a quick second. So with your Miranda rights, if I do a quick search, so like I said, if I do a quick search, which I just did, you'll see that some states add following sentences, might have it worded different. The biggest thing about the Miranda warnings, your Miranda rights, Miranda warnings, or being Mirandized, they're all the same thing. It basically comes down to you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to have an attorney, and if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. The final question, do you understand these rights? either say yes or no. There's one waiver at the end that the only time, at least in Arizona, that I know of, I don't know about other states, but the only time that this is read is with a juvenile. And actually, juvenile rights in the state of Arizona are completely different. They read the same. There is a lot more information to it. So the last, I'll say, warning or advisement or waiver is, with these rights, do you wish to speak to me? Again, Arizona, you don't have to ask that. I don't know about any other states. I know in just from some research, there are states that, like Indiana, New Jersey, Nevada, Oklahoma, and Alaska, add that we have no way of giving you a lawyer, but one will be appointed for you if you wish, and if you wish, if and when you go to court. Nodding your head, yes or no, or just silence, doesn't satisfy the requirements of answering Miranda. It also doesn't really invoke it. You just being silent doesn't answer my question of, do you understand your rights? It's good practice, and I'll say it's most likely common practice for, if your rights are read, you don't say anything, interviews are done. With Miranda, 9 times out of 10, get an attorney. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it at all. There are enough cases of innocent people being convicted from statements they made post Miranda, but there's really no evidence that they did it. So those are your Miranda rights. That's where they came from. Again, Miranda rights, warning, or being Mirandized, it's all the same thing. There are other cases that I'll say mimic this. So you have Vignera, I think that's how you say it, versus New York, Westover versus the U.S., California versus Stewart. But Miranda v. Arizona, I believe, was the first one and set the precedence. So your Miranda rights essentially support and protect your Fifth Amendment right, because Miranda rights, how do I word this? Miranda rights in itself aren't a constitutional thing. This is not in, there's no amendment, 5.5 Miranda rights in the Constitution. It falls under the Fifth Amendment. So we go to this video, or this case next. Vega versus Tekoh, I believe it's pronounced. I'm not sure. So it was a Fifth Amendment violation of sorts. And this is all information from Ballotpedia. There are some other sites that give you explanations. I'll say pretty basic ones, because I'm not very well versed in legalese. I hate reading the court documents. But if you go to Ballotpedia, you'll see the same thing that I'm about to talk about. It's about the Fifth Amendment protections for self-incrimination, and they specifically talk about Miranda versus Arizona, where people get the belief that your Miranda rights are taken away. Where this is actually being focused is, can a plaintiff, so somebody that's going through the court proceedings, we're in a sidebar. Plaintiff and defendant. Plaintiff is the person that is initiating the case. Most of the time they're a victim. Defendant is the dummy that possibly committed a crime. They're usually the suspect. P for person, D for dummy. Again, I don't believe that this is going to be a big legal advice post. Just kind of lost my train of thought there. My computer did something weird. So the question was, can the plaintiff, aka the now victim in this case, sue a law enforcement officer under Section 1983 based off of their failure to provide Miranda warnings? So the Ninth Circuit Court said, yeah, you can. And that was back in, oh man, this is another sex assault case. I believe it was in 2021 is when this took place. So background of it, guy works at a hospital. It was from LA Sheriff's Department. The hospital staff was accused of sexual assault of a patient. The victims, or not the victims, sorry, the citizens, we'll call them citizens versus officer or detective person, whatever. So the citizen was detained. They weren't allowed to leave the MRI room where the questioning was conducted. And I say detained because he was not allowed to leave. And we'll go over that last. The civilian hospital worker was accused of touching the patient's vagina, and they denied. About 40 minutes, refused to confess, and then the officer stated that it was captured on video. Person asked to speak with an attorney. That request was ignored. And then the story from the civilian is that they were essentially forced to write out a statement due to fear because the officer had his hand on his gun and said he was not joking when he wanted to have the person write out their statement. So the person, or the civilian, said that they made a mistake, and at that point he said he was willing to speak with officers. He was then questioned, and they believe he felt regretful. Again, this is all from the Ballotpedia stuff, just trying to give you guys a overview of how this kind of started. So they go to trial. The defense had an expert witness talk about coerced confessions. After that, there was a non-guilty verdict. So after being found not guilty, he then sued that officer. That was for a Fifth Amendment violation because he was never read his rights. So we go forward in, can he be sued? Well, yes and no. So the Ninth Circuit Court said, yes, you have a Fifth Amendment violation and you can now sue. Again, very basic wording and verbiage of, and very shortened version of what's going on. Here's how it goes, though. It then gets moved up to the Supreme Court. And on June 23rd, 2022, they actually reversed the decision in saying that you cannot sue an officer based off of that. So, a lot of information. Try to talk slower in this video because there was a lot of information. So let's condense it really quick. So you have your Miranda rights. Miranda v. Arizona, you have to be read them for protection of self-incrimination. You then have the Vega versus Tekoh, which is where they say he was coerced into confessing, which, well, sidebar, that is an issue with one of the interrogation techniques that are taught around the country. That's a conversation for another day. So you have that. The plaintiff was found not guilty, or defendant was found not guilty. He then wants to sue the officer for bringing in statements that were essentially made under coercion without Miranda. Goes to the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit being very liberal, and with this one I actually quite agree with their determination. Again, I don't know the entire backstory. I'm reading synopsis of the case, but from what I read, I agree with them on this one actually, which is surprising. Go forward to the Supreme Court. It was appealed, and they reverse it, saying no, you can't. You don't have. You don't really have enough to sue. You don't really have that violation. So, well, right quick. The reason to sue was under Section 1983. It provided an individual the right to sue state government employees and others acting under color of state law for civil rights violations. It doesn't provide any civil rights, that section. It just gives you a way to enforce the civil rights. So we have all that. Are your rights taken away at the end of the day? No, they are not taken away. What was taken away is, I'll say actually really shitty, the ability to sue an officer for a civil rights violation. That is it's a crutch that certain groups stand on in order to try and push something and make something out of nothing. And I'll kind of leave that part there kind of vague. I don't want to get into that. That's not what this is about. However, when there are civil rights violations, blatant ones at that, there should not only be legal, but also civil ramifications for it. You were given, as an officer, you're given the ability to murder, and I'll say that, but everybody can in justified shootings. But given the ability to murder, kidnap, and I'll say in the same way, unlawfully imprison somebody. And this is what I would explain when I was training new guys, that you have to understand, if you don't have probable cause, because you have reasonable suspicion and probable cause. If you don't have probable cause, which is just 51% sure that something was done, you can't just handcuff somebody and take them to jail. If you violate somebody's rights, you have to have good reason for it, aka probable cause. That really opened up eyes of some people, because they were just like, oh, well, I'm just doing a job, I'm just taking them to jail. No, you're kidnapping them. And some people don't like that that I speak this way, but it's true. You are taking somebody somewhere against their will. You're doing it legally, but if you don't have that probable cause, then you're doing it illegally, and then you have issues like this. So we'll wrap this up. It's a little bit longer of a video than I wanted, but I did try and speak a little slower than I normally do because of the, I'll say, complex nature of what's going on. So break it down in the end like this. Your Miranda rights are still there. You still have the right to remain silent. You still have all of those rights. But your right to sue an officer or state employee for a civil rights violation, which is kind of really what it boils down to, of the Fifth Amendment violation, is gone for now. I don't see this lasting very long, maybe a few months, and then it'll get overturned, I believe. I think they're going to wait for all the Roe v. Wade and all that other stuff to calm down before they do anything else. But that's my little spiel on it. If you like these, I can do more, I'll say, legal-ish talks. They're not something I enjoy doing, and there's not something that this page is really for, but I obviously have some first-hand knowledge of this stuff, so I like to share it, and I like to make sure people know that what their rights are. It's something that as a citizen you should know, and if you don't, then you're just hurting yourself. So let me know what you think. Try and keep the comments here civil. I don't need a political discussion. But just let me know what you thought of the video, or, well, I'll say audio post. I'll also throw this up on my YouTube. It'll just be a probably little moving video thing like usual. But yeah, go ahead and share this, like it, and yeah, I'm glad to be back. This is actually my first post from the new office, so I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and I will see you next week.
Because the road to hell is paved with good intentions.